ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 1 of the series. So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Izuku Midoriya had always been different from the other kids in his class. While most of his classmates had loud, flashy quirks that made them the center of attention, Izuku's life had been one of quiet determination. He had no quirk of his own, at least, not until the day he went to the quirk doctor. But before that, there was a moment that would change his life forever. He was just 6 years old, and the other kids at school were already starting to show off their abilities. It was lunchtime, and Izuku was eating alone, watching as Bakugo Katsuki and his gang of friends terrorized the smaller kids in the playground. "Hey, you," Bakugo shouted at a frightened little boy holding a lunchbox. "Give me your food." Izuku's heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't stand bullying, and it always made him feel helpless. His fists clenched as he watched Bakugo grab the boy's lunch, throwing it onto the ground. "You don't deserve to eat," Bakugo sneered. Izuku stood up, his legs shaking. He couldn't let this happen, not this time. He wasn't strong like Bakugo, and he didn't have a quirk that would allow him to fight back, but there had to be something he could do. "Hey," Izuku called out, his voice shaking. "Stop it, Bakugo, that's not right." Bakugo turned around, a cruel smirk crossing his face. "What's this, Deku? You think you can stop me? You don't even have a quirk." "I don't care," Izuku shouted, stepping forward. "It's not right to hurt people just because you can." Bakugo's expression hardened, his eyes narrowing as he took a step toward Izuku. "You want to be a hero? Don't make me laugh." With a sudden movement, Bakugo raised his hand, preparing to launch an explosion in Izuku's direction. Izuku flinched, but before he could even react, something strange happened. A sharp, almost instinctive sense of awareness washed over him. His heart raced as his body seemed to move on its own. He ducked just in time, feeling the heat of Bakugo's explosion as it passed by him. But he didn't stop there. As Bakugo prepared for another attack, Izuku's senses heightened again. This time, he could see every movement Bakugo made before it happened. Izuku's legs moved on their own, dodging and weaving in ways he couldn't explain. His body felt stronger than it ever had before. With a burst of energy, he reached out and grabbed Bakugo's wrist, stopping the explosion in its tracks. Bakugo stared at him in disbelief. What the hell did you just do?" he growled, trying to free himself. Izuku, too, was just as surprised as Bakugo. He couldn't explain what had happened, how his body had moved so fluidly, how he had known exactly when to dodge. He just felt different, like something had awakened inside him. Before anything else could happen, the teacher rushed over, separating the two boys. Bakugo stormed off, muttering curses under his breath, but Izuku didn't pay him any mind. He was too focused on what had just occurred. For the first time in his life, Izuku felt like maybe, just maybe, he could become a hero. And it was all because of whatever that was. The next day, Izuku's mom, Inko Midoriya, took him to the quirk doctor, concerned about what had happened. She had always known that Izuku didn't have a typical quirk like the others, but this new ability was something she couldn't ignore. After a thorough examination, the doctor gave them his diagnosis. "Your son has a very rare quirk," the doctor said, his glasses gleaming as he adjusted them. "It's not like most others. It's not a physical manifestation or an elemental ability, but rather a mental and physical enhancement. This is what we call Haki." "Haki?" Inko asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What does that mean?" The doctor nodded, explaining, "Haki is a mysterious and powerful quirk that grants its user enhanced perception, focus, and strength. There are two distinct aspects to it: observation Haki, which allows the user to sense and predict movements and actions, and armament Haki, which enhances physical strength and fortifies the body. There may even be a third aspect, but it's impossible to say whether he has access to that yet." Izuku's mind raced as he processed the information. A quirk that enhanced his body and mind. This was exactly what he had needed. He had always felt weak, but with this newfound power, he could change that. He could become the hero he had always dreamed of. The next few weeks were a blur of training for Izuku. He spent every spare moment practicing with his newfound quirk, trying to control it. His observation Haki allowed him to sense the smallest movements around him. It was as if the world slowed down, and he could predict what would happen before it even did. His armament Haki allowed him to focus his energy into his limbs, making him stronger and more resilient. One afternoon, after a long session of training in the park, Izuku was sitting on a bench, panting and sweating. His body felt stronger, but he knew he still had a long way to go. There was still something missing, something that felt incomplete. "Mom," he called out, standing up as he ran toward his mother, who was waiting nearby. "I want to ask you something." Inko looked at him curiously. "What is it, Izuku?" Izuku hesitated, then spoke with determination. "I want to start sword training." Inko blinked, surprised by the request. "Sword training? But why a sword?" Izuku scratched the back of his head nervously, trying to explain. "I think it will help me focus my powers better. I've been practicing with my quirk, and I feel like having a sword in my hands will help me control it, give me discipline. Please, Mom, I think this is the way to unlock the full potential of my quirk." Inko looked at him, concern in her eyes. "A sword is dangerous, Izuku. You'll need proper guidance and training if you want to take this seriously." Izuku's face hardened with resolve. "I'll be careful, Mom. I promise. I need this. I want to become a hero." Seeing the unwavering determination in her son's eyes, Inko sighed softly. "All right, Izuku. If this is what you truly want, I'll support you. We'll find someone who can teach you." A week later, Inko took Izuku to a small dojo on the outskirts of town. It was a peaceful place, nestled away from the hustle and bustle of the city, where wooden practice swords clacked against one another in rhythmic harmony. The sensei, an elderly man named Master Hisao, agreed to take Izuku under his wing. "Are you ready?" Master Hisao asked, observing Izuku closely. "Sword training is more than just learning to swing a blade. It's about discipline, control, and focus. It will test not only your body but your heart." Izuku nodded, eager to begin. "I'm ready." Master Hisao handed him a wooden sword, guiding him through the basic stances and movements. As he practiced, Izuku felt something shift inside him. The sword wasn't just a tool, it felt like an extension of his body, a natural way to channel his Haki. He could feel the power of his armament Haki infusing the blade, turning the wood into something far stronger. As the days passed, Izuku's training intensified. He spent every moment honing his skills with the sword, mastering the balance between his quirk and his body. His observation Haki helped him anticipate Master Hisao's movements during sparring, and his armament Haki made his sword strikes stronger than ever. Finally, the day arrived. It was the last day of school before summer vacation. Izuku stood at the front of the classroom, his bakkin slung over his back. He had trained hard, and though he still had a long way to go, he felt more confident in his abilities than ever before. The classroom buzzed with excitement as the teacher, Mr. Shiro, stood at the front. Mr. Shiro was a no-nonsense teacher, but he had a way of inspiring the students to push beyond their limits. "All right, class," Mr. Shiro began, his voice calm but firm. "You've all made it through another year. But before we finish up, I need to ask you something important." The students fell silent, their attention focused on him. Izuku was so wrapped up in his thoughts that he didn't even hear the words. His mind was a blur as he thought about the future, his dream of becoming a hero, his heart racing with excitement at the prospect of the upcoming UA entrance exams. What if this was his chance? His chance to prove to himself, to his mom, and to everyone that he could be more than just the boy with no quirk? He zoned out completely, not hearing Mr. Shiro's words at all. All he could think about was his dream, the dream he'd had for so long. The sound of the bell ringing was the only thing that broke him from his thoughts. The noise snapped him back to reality, and he suddenly realized that the class was over. The students stood up in a flurry of chatter, packing their things away. Izuku smiled faintly to himself, determination shining in his eyes. He didn't need to hear the rest of the announcement. He knew exactly what he had to do next. He was going to UA, and nothing would stand in his way. The sound of the school bell echoed through the halls, breaking Izuku Midoriya from his thoughts. He blinked, realizing he had completely zoned out during Mr. Shiro's closing remarks to the class. Around him, students were packing up their belongings, chattering excitedly about their plans for the summer or for the lucky few, their hopes for the prestigious UA high school. "Hey!" Deku Bakugo's sharp voice cut through the noise, making Izuku flinch. Turning slowly, Izuku saw Bakugo standing at his desk with his usual sneer. His palm sparked faintly, the explosion small but threatening. You better not think for 1 second you're gonna get into UA with that lame quirk of yours. Izuku clenched his fists, but he didn't respond. He had learned that arguing with Bakugo only made things worse. Instead, he packed up his notebook, slung his bag over his shoulder, and walked past him without a word. TCH, Bakugo clicked his tongue, watching Izuku leave. Better stay out of my way, Deku. You're just gonna embarrass yourself. Ignoring him, Izuku stepped out into the cool afternoon air. His heart was pounding, not from fear of Bakugo, but from anticipation. He couldn't wait to get home, to keep training, and to prepare for the UA entrance exam. The streets were busy with people finishing their workday, and Izuku lost himself in the crowd. He kept his head down, his mind racing with thoughts of his future. How could he refine his haki before the exam? Master Hisao's sword training had been invaluable, but would it be enough? I'll just have to work harder, he muttered to himself, determination flickering in his eyes. As he walked under an overpass, he felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of danger. His observation haki flared to life, and time seemed to slow. Izuku turned his head just in time to see a manhole cover burst open behind him, a torrent of viscous sludge pouring out. What the? Izuku barely managed to jump back as the sludge villain emerged, its grotesque form twisting and expanding. Finally, some fresh air, the villain snarled, its eyes locking onto Izuku. And look at this, a perfect little body to hide in. The creature lunged at him. Instinctively, Izuku activated his armament haki, fortifying his arms as he braced himself. The sludge collided with his defense, splattering but failing to overpower him. You've got some fight in you, kid, the villain growled, reforming and attacking again. Izuku ducked and weaved, his observation haki allowing him to predict the villain's movements. His fortified fist struck out, hitting the sludge hard enough to knock chunks away, but the villain reformed with ease. I can't win like this, Izuku thought, sweat pouring down his face. I need a plan. The villain surged forward, wrapping around Izuku's legs and pulling him to the ground. His fortified arms kept the sludge from engulfing his torso, but he was losing strength. No, Izuku gritted his teeth, pushing back with everything he had. I won't give up. Just as the villain began to smother him, a booming voice echoed through the alley. Never fear, for I am here. All Might appeared in a blur, landing with enough force to create a small shockwave. The villain growled in recognition. All Might. That's right, All Might declared, grinning. And I'm here to put an end to this. With a single, earth-shaking punch, All Might scattered the sludge villain, splattering it across the alley. Izuku collapsed to the ground, gasping for air. All Might quickly scooped the sludge into an empty soda bottle, sealing it tight. There we go, another villain neutralized. He turned to Izuku, helping him to his feet. You okay, young man? Izuku nodded, still in awe. Why, yeah. Thank you, All Might. You're amazing. All Might grinned and struck a heroic pose. Just doing my job. He prepared to leap away, but Izuku's heart raced. This was his chance. Wait, Izuku shouted, grabbing onto All Might's leg just as the hero launched himself into the air. What are you doing? All Might exclaimed, looking down at the boy clinging to him. I need to ask you something, Izuku shouted over the rushing wind. All Might sighed, landing on a rooftop. As he set Izuku down, the bottle containing the sludge villain slipped out of his pocket, rolling unnoticed to the side. Izuku scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding. I need to know, can someone like me, someone without a strong quirk, become a hero? All Might's smile faltered, and he coughed violently, spitting out vital fluid. Izuku froze in shock as the once mighty hero deflated, his muscular form shrinking into that of a frail, skinny man. What happened to you? Izuku stammered. All Might sighed, sitting down. This is my true form. A battle with a particularly nasty villain left me like this. I can only maintain my muscular form for a few hours a day. Izuku stared, his mind reeling. The number one hero, the symbol of peace, had a secret like this? About your question, All Might continued, his tone softer. Being a hero is about more than just power. But it's tough without a strong quirk. Izuku's chest tightened. He was about to press further when an explosion ripped through the air, shaking the building. All Might's head snapped toward the noise. That's close. Without hesitation, they rushed down the stairs, emerging into chaos. A massive crowd had gathered, and smoke billowed from a street corner. Flames flickered in the distance, and Izuku's heart sank as he saw the cause of the commotion. The sludge villain had escaped and was now attacking Bakugo Katsuki. The villain had engulfed Bakugo, who struggled to break free, his explosions flaring but doing little damage. Bakugo's eyes darted around in panic, his usual confidence nowhere to be seen. 3 heroes stood nearby, but none moved to help. One of them, a man with a water-based quirk, shook his head. My quirk isn't strong enough to deal with that kind of mass. Another hero, a wood manipulator, sighed. If we go in, we might make it worse. The kid's explosions are keeping it unstable. Izuku's heart pounded as he watched. Bakugo's eyes locked with his, and in that moment, Izuku saw something he had never seen before: fear. Without thinking, Izuku's legs moved. Hey, kid, stop, one of the heroes shouted, but Izuku didn't listen. He charged forward, activating his armament Haki. His fist glowed faintly as he struck the sludge villain, splattering parts of it away from Bakugo. Let him go, Izuku shouted, his voice filled with determination. The sludge villain roared, swatting at Izuku. He dodged with his observation Haki, ducking and weaving through the attacks. His strikes grew more precise, aiming for weak points in the villain's form, but it wasn't enough. The sludge began to wrap around him, pulling him closer. Stupid Deku, Bakugo shouted, his voice muffled. What are you doing? I won't let you die, Izuku yelled, struggling against the sludge. Just as the villain tightened its grip, a familiar booming voice rang out. Never fear, All Might appeared in his muscular form, his eyes blazing with determination. For I am here. With a single punch, All Might struck the villain. The force of his blow was so immense that it dispersed the sludge entirely, clearing the skies above and sending a gust of wind rippling through the crowd. The heroes quickly moved to secure the villain while medics rushed to check on Bakugo. As the chaos settled, the heroes turned to Izuku, their faces stern. That was reckless, kid, one of them scolded. You could have gotten yourself and that boy killed. Izuku bowed deeply, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. I'm sorry. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Bakugo, sitting on the ground with soot on his face, glared at Izuku. I didn't need your help, you nerd. Izuku looked at him, his expression calm. Maybe not, but I couldn't leave you behind. As Izuku made his way home, the memory of the fight lingered in his mind. His body ached, but his heart was steady. Before he could reach his apartment, All Might appeared once more, his skinny form leaning against a lamppost. You're quite the courageous one, young man, All Might said, coughing into his hand. I wanted to talk to you about something. Izuku turned, surprised. All Might. The hero took a deep breath. I've been looking for someone to inherit my quirk one for all. Watching you today, I realized you might be the one I'm looking for. Izuku's eyes widened. Inherit your quirk? You mean, I could have your power? All Might nodded, his expression serious. Yes, I believe you have the heart of a hero. Izuku hesitated, his fists clenching. Thank you, All Might. But I don't want to rely on someone else's power. I want to become the #1 hero with my own strength. All Might stared at him, shocked by the conviction in his voice. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. You truly are something special, young man. And with that resolve, I can confidently say, you can become a hero. Izuku's heart swelled with determination. His path was set, and he would walk it on his own terms. Izuku Midoriya's heart was racing. All Might, the symbol of peace, had just offered him something incredible, his quirk, one for all. And yet, Izuku had declined. I want to become the #1 hero, he had said, his voice steady, but I want to do it with my own strength. All Might stared at him for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. Young man, you've got guts, he said, his voice softer now. Most people would have jumped at the chance without a second thought. But I see something special in you, and I want to help you succeed on your own terms. Izuku's eyes widened. You mean? Yes, All Might said with a grin. I'll train you, Midoriya. Your body, your stamina, your instincts, everything. You have a strong will, but your foundation needs work if you want to compete with the best. Izuku felt his heart swell with determination. Thank you, All Might. I promise I won't let you down. All right, then, All Might said, clapping his hands together. But don't think for a second this will be easy. Meet me at the Dagoba beach tomorrow morning. Bring water and plenty of resolve. The first day of training. The next morning, Izuku stood at the edge of Dagoba beach, his jaw dropping as he took in the sheer amount of trash piled high along the shoreline. Old tires, rusted appliances, and mounds of debris stretched out in every direction. All of this needs to be cleaned? Izuku asked, his voice trembling. Exactly, All Might said, grinning. Clearing this beach will not only help the community, but it'll also build your strength, endurance, and discipline. Every piece of junk you move is a step closer to your goal. Izuku nodded, though his legs felt weak just looking at the task ahead. Okay, I'll do it. He approached the nearest pile of debris, crouching to pick up an old tire. As he struggled to lift it, his arms and legs trembled under the weight. A bead of sweat rolled down his face, and his mind wandered to the countless hours he'd spent training his quirk and swordsmanship. I've trained to master my quirk, Izuku muttered under his breath, gripping the tire harder, and I've worked endlessly to improve my swordsmanship. But I've never trained my body like this. If I don't change that now, I'll never be able to stand at the top. With a loud grunt, he hoisted the tire over his shoulder and began trudging toward the designated collection area. His legs burned with each step, but he forced himself to push forward. All Might watched him closely, arms crossed, a smile still on his face. That's the spirit, young man. Keep pushing, All Might called out, voice filled with encouragement. The work was exhausting, just a single trip left Izuku's arms aching and his legs shaky. Pace yourself, young Midoriya, All Might called out after him. The key to endurance is consistency. Push too hard too fast, and you'll burn out. Izuku wiped the sweat from his brow and took a few deep breaths. You're right, he muttered, nodding to himself. He started walking slower, pacing himself while focusing on each motion. As he moved more deliberately, he felt the burn in his muscles shift into something more manageable. It wasn't easy, but the more he worked, the clearer his goal became. By midday, Izuku was drenched in sweat, his hands blistered from gripping the heavy debris. But each time he felt like stopping, he thought about UA High School, about his dream, and about how far he still had to go. I can do this, he muttered to himself, lifting another piece of trash. The sun beat down on him as he continued to clear the beach, but his resolve remained unshaken. He thought back to the countless hours he had spent training his Haki, his swordsmanship, and the time spent honing his quirk. But this was different. This was building the foundation that would support everything else. This was strengthening his very body. As the day wore on, the amount of trash seemed endless, but Izuku's determination never wavered. Every step he took brought him closer to something greater. His muscles screamed in protest, but he ignored the pain. He had to. The thought of standing in front of All Might, showing him his progress, made him push harder. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, Izuku collapsed onto the sand, his body trembling from exhaustion. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, and his limbs felt like they were made of lead. Despite his fatigue, there was a sense of pride within him. He had worked harder today than ever before, and though the beach was still far from clean, it was starting to show signs of progress. Well done, young man, All Might said, handing him a bottle of water. This is just the beginning, but you've shown great resolve. Keep that fire burning. Izuku smiled weakly. Thank you, All Might. I'll keep working hard. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Each morning, Izuku worked tirelessly to clear the beach. The heavy lifting strengthened his muscles, while the repetitive tasks honed his focus and stamina. He became accustomed to the grueling work, building up his physical endurance more and more each day. He also focused on refining his Haki. In the mornings, he would clear debris, and in the evenings, he'd meet with Master Hisao to continue his swordsmanship training. The blend of physical conditioning and mental sharpening kept Izuku busy, but he welcomed the challenge. It kept him focused, it kept him determined, and every day, he felt himself getting closer to his goal. One evening, after a particularly intense training session, Izuku sat down, his back against a tree near the dojo. He wiped the sweat from his brow, staring up at the starry sky. His mind drifted to the battles ahead, to the trials he would face as he pursued his dream of becoming the #1 hero. I need to be better, Izuku thought, clenching his fists. I can't rely on just one thing. I need to be strong in every way, physically, mentally, and with my sword. Only then will I be ready. As he trained, he learned more about himself. He learned that strength wasn't just about power, it was about balance. His body, his Haki, his swordsmanship, they all needed to work together, each part supporting the other. The more he trained, the more everything began to click. One night, after a sparring match with Hisao, Izuku felt his blade slice through the air with newfound precision. His strikes were sharper, more controlled, and the pressure of the sword felt almost natural in his hands. Hisao nodded, impressed. Your progress is undeniable, Izuku. You've sharpened your skills, but now you must learn to trust them. Trust in your haki, trust in your body, and trust in your instincts. The battlefield will test you, and in that moment, you must rely on everything you've learned. The day before the UA entrance exam. The night before the UA entrance exam, Izuku stood on the now spotless Dagoba Municipal Beach, staring out at the ocean. The waves crashed gently against the shore, a calming backdrop to the whirlwind of emotions swirling in his chest. You've done it, young Midoriya, All Might said, walking up beside him. This beach is proof of your hard work and determination. But more than that, you've built the strength, skill, and resolve needed to face the challenges ahead. Izuku turned to him, his eyes shining with gratitude. Thank you, All Might. I couldn't have done this without your guidance. All Might laughed. Nonsense, I may have given you the tools, but it was you who chose to wield them. Remember that tomorrow. You've earned your place at UA. Go out there and show them what you're made of. Later that evening, Izuku visited Master Hisao for one final sparring session. You've come far, Hisao said as their blades clashed, sparks flying in the dimly lit dojo. Your haki has matured, and your strikes are precise. Tomorrow, trust in what you've learned. I will, Izuku said, his voice steady. Thank you for everything, Master Hisao. Hisao nodded, a rare smile crossing his face. Good luck, Izuku. The path of a hero is never easy, but you have the strength to walk it. Morning of the entrance exam. As the sun rose on the day of the UA entrance exam, Izuku stood outside the towering gates of the prestigious school. His heart pounded in his chest, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was excitement. He glanced down at his hands, calloused from months of training, and then at the hilt of his sword, strapped securely to his side. The sweat on his brow wasn't from nerves, but from anticipation. His body had been honed by All Might's grueling training, his swordsmanship refined by Master Hisao's careful guidance, and his haki had sharpened into a potent weapon. All Might's training, Master Hisao's lessons. Everything I've worked for has led to this moment, he thought, taking a deep breath. With renewed determination, Izuku stepped forward, ready to face the challenges ahead. This is it, he whispered to himself. Time to show them that I can become a hero. Izuku Midoriya stood in the massive UA High School auditorium, his heart racing with anticipation. The space around him buzzed with excitement and tension, the other students chattering nervously as they awaited the entrance exam. Izuku's palms were slightly sweaty, his fingers tightly gripping the hilt of his sword. He had worked so hard for this moment, but now, standing before the gates of UA, it was finally sinking in that this was the true test of everything he had trained for. He had trained tirelessly, refining his swordsmanship, honing his haki abilities, and building his body to match his growing resolve. But nothing could prepare him for the sheer magnitude of this moment. He was about to face a real test of his abilities, surrounded by other hopeful students, all striving to become heroes. All right, everyone sit tight, we're about to begin. The booming voice of Present Mike filled the room, immediately commanding attention. The students quieted down, and Izuku turned his focus to the front of the room. Good to see you all. Welcome to the UA entrance exam, Present Mike continued, his energy practically bouncing off the walls. I'm your proctor for today, and I'm here to tell you exactly how this exam is gonna work. It's a practical exam, where we'll test your combat skills, your strategy, and your ability to survive in a disaster zone. Izuku felt a knot tighten in his stomach, but he kept his focus, knowing he had trained for this. Present Mike paced excitedly back and forth, his voice loud and clear. Now, there are 3 types of robots you'll face in the test: small, medium, and large. You'll gain points by defeating them or immobilizing them, and you need to score as many points as possible to pass. But there's a catch. There's a 0-point robot, a big, tough, and dangerous machine that doesn't give any points, and it's just there to test your survival instincts. Stay away from it. Izuku's eyes widened at the mention of the 0-point robot. It sounded terrifying. The mention of a massive, overwhelming threat like that raised the stakes for everyone. One of the students in the front row, a serious-looking boy with glasses, immediately raised his hand. Present Mike, about the 0-point robot, why would you even include such a dangerous obstacle in the exam? Wouldn't that make it unfair? Izuku turned his attention to the student, wondering what Present Mike's response would be. But before the hero could answer, a voice cut through the tension. "Don't be an idiot," the voice said harshly. Izuku blinked and looked toward the source of the voice. Bakugo Katsuki, a brash-looking student in the front row, who was scowling with an intensity that was hard to ignore. The 0-point robot is a threat, but it's not something you should worry about unless you're stupid enough to engage it. It's just there to test if we have the brains to avoid it. The student with glasses, clearly flustered, opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, another voice called out. "Please, if you'd just let Present Mike finish explaining." The voice was sharp, filled with authority, and it belonged to another student who quickly stood up from his seat. It was a tall, well-built young man with a serious expression, his dark blue suit fitting him snugly. His posture was rigid, almost like a soldier. "I don't believe anyone should be questioning the exam, especially before we even hear all the details," the student continued. "It's just common sense. Present Mike is giving us the necessary information, so let's allow him to finish without interruptions." Izuku watched the student for a moment. His words sounded confident, but there was an edge to his tone that made him seem a bit too intense. It wasn't long before Present Mike responded with a hearty laugh. All right, everyone calm down, just letting you know. That's Ida Tenya for you, our resident rule follower," Present Mike said, gesturing to the student. "But you're right, Ida, let me finish my explanation before we have a full-blown debate." Ida, as he was apparently named, lowered himself back into his seat, although his stern gaze remained on the room. "Thank you, Ida," Present Mike said with a grin. "Now, as I was saying, the 0-point robot isn't something you should try to fight. But it's not all about points either. You'll need to make the right choices in order to pass the exam. If you focus too much on the big guys, you might not rack up enough points with the smaller ones. It's all about strategy." The students exchanged nervous glances, but Present Mike wasn't done yet. "Now, under your seats, you'll find your zone assignment. Pull it out and check. It'll tell you where you'll be starting your exam. Go on, check them out." Izuku quickly reached under his seat and pulled out a card. The words Zone B3 were written on it. He looked around and saw other students reading their assignments as well. The atmosphere in the room shifted to one of anticipation as everyone realized that the real test was just moments away. Present Mike clapped his hands together. "All right, you all know your zones now. Time to head out. And get ready, we're going to start the exam in 5 minutes. Get moving, and remember, don't just go charging and blindly use your heads." The students began to shuffle out of their seats, heading toward the designated zones. Izuku stood up, his heart pounding, and followed the flow of students out of the auditorium and into the testing area. The city zone. Izuku soon found himself standing in the middle of a ruined cityscape. The air smelled faintly of smoke, and debris littered the ground. It looked like a disaster zone, a perfect place to test aspiring heroes. His eyes scanned the area, alert and ready. The familiar weight of his sword against his side was a comfort, and his Haki buzzed through his body, keeping him sharp and aware. As he ventured deeper into the city zone, he noticed a girl standing near a fallen pillar, looking a little nervous. She had brown hair tied into pigtails, and she was scanning her surroundings with wide eyes. Izuku approached her slowly, his voice calm. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked gently. The girl turned to him, startled, before offering a nervous smile. "Oh hi, yeah, I'm just a little overwhelmed," she admitted, her voice shaky. "This is a lot to take in. You know, also my name is Ochiko Uraraka?" Izuku gave her a friendly smile. "I understand. It's a big moment for all of us. But I'm sure you'll do great. You've got this." Before she could respond, a voice from behind them suddenly interrupted. "Hey, excuse me, sir." Izuku's head snapped around to see a tall, blue-suited boy walking toward them. He looked somewhat upset, his posture rigid as if he were ready to lecture. "Why are you talking to her?" The boy demanded an answer, his gaze fixing on Izuku. "You should be focused on the exam, not chatting with others. Don't you realize this is a test of survival?" Izuku blinked in confusion. Sorry. I didn't mean to distract her. I was just..." The boy interrupted him again. "You shouldn't be talking to people unless it's absolutely necessary. Focus on the task at hand." He looked at the girl, Ochiko, and scowled. "And you don't let him distract you. This is serious." Ochiko looked back and forth between the two boys, her nerves rising. Izuku, taken aback by the sudden harshness, tried to smooth things over. "It's okay. We're all in this together. I'm sure she can focus just fine." He turned back to the boy. I'm Izuku Midoriya, and the girl's name is Achiko Uraraka, by the way. I'm not trying to be a distraction. The boy's stern expression softened slightly. Tinya Ida, he replied curtly. Just make sure you're focused, Midoriya. This exam is too important for you to waste time. Before Izuku could respond, a loud siren blared, signaling the start of the exam. All right, enough talking. Present Mix's voice echoed over the loudspeakers. The exam starts now. Get moving. Students, show us what you've got. Izuku didn't waste time. His keen senses quickly alerted him to the presence of a one-point model robot hiding behind a pile of rubble. Its metallic body creaked as it shifted, unaware of the incoming danger. Izuku's sword was already drawn, and in a blur of motion, he surged forward. With a swift swing, his blade coated with armament Haki cut through the robot's torso, causing sparks to fly as the machine collapsed into a pile of twisted metal. The robot crumpled, and Izuku immediately checked his score. 1 point. He moved on without hesitation, his mind focused. The next robot was a 2-point model, a more aggressive design with bladed arms and sharp movement. Izuku could hear the robot's heavy footsteps as it neared from the street corner, its mechanical eyes scanning for prey. Izuku's observation Haki flared, and he immediately read its movements. The robot lunged, its bladed arms swinging toward him in a vicious arc. With a burst of speed, Izuku dodged the strike, his body moving as if guided by instinct. He countered with a quick slash to its midsection, the sword cutting clean through its armor. Sparks erupted as the robot fell, its body twitching before it finally powered down. 2 more points. Progressing through the exam. Izuku was moving fast now, each robot falling with minimal effort as he utilized his armament Haki to enhance his strength. The city zone was starting to clear out a bit, but there was no shortage of robots. He quickly encountered a 3-point model, a massive, hulking machine with multiple blaster cannons on its back. The robot fired off a barrage of lasers, but Izuku was ready. With observation Haki guiding his movements, he easily dodged each blast, his agility amplified by his sharpened senses. The robot's movements were predictable, almost mechanical in their simplicity. Izuku circled around the back of the robot, aiming for its weak points, its exhaust vents and power core. With a single powerful strike of his sword, empowered by armament Haki, he struck the core, causing the robot to stagger. Another blow shattered its blasters, and with a final thrust of his sword, the 3-point robot fell. 3 more points. By the time he had fought his way through several more robots, Izuku was feeling confident. He had accumulated 50 points. Each battle felt like a confirmation of his abilities, his swordsmanship, his Haki, and his body all working in sync. Izuku had been making his way through the city zone, accumulating points with each robot he fought. His movements were fast, his strikes precise, and his senses sharp, all thanks to his months of grueling training. But as he rounded a corner, everything changed. A loud rumbling filled the air and the ground. Beneath his feet began to shake. The sound of massive, thundering footsteps echoed throughout the city. Izuku's blood ran cold as he instinctively activated his observation Haki, his senses reaching out to gauge the presence of whatever was causing the chaos. Then he saw it. The 0-point robot, a colossal machine of destruction, stomped into view, its towering form blocking out the sun. Each step caused the ground to tremble as the robot moved toward the center of the city, its massive arms swinging with brutal force. The 0-point robot wasn't designed for speed or precision, it was a juggernaut meant to wreak havoc, and it was coming dangerously close to the rubble where someone was trapped. Izuku's eyes widened in horror as he spotted a figure beneath the debris, a student struggling to free herself. He recognized her immediately, Achiko Uraraka. She was stuck, pinned by a large piece of debris, and with each massive step the 0-point robot took, the ground shook violently, making it even harder for her to escape. Izuku's instincts kicked in. He couldn't let this happen. His body surged with adrenaline as he sprinted toward the rubble, heart pounding in his chest. The 0-point robot's foot came crashing down onto the debris with terrifying force, just inches from Achiko's head. "No!" Izuku shouted, his voice a mix of fear and determination. In that instant, Izuku pushed his armament Haki to its limit, his entire body brimming with power. He could feel the intense pressure of the robot's next attack as it raised its foot to strike down at Achiko, but he wasn't going to let that happen. With everything he had, Izuku sprinted forward, closing the distance between himself and the massive machine. His heart thudded in his chest as he summoned his strength. His observation Haki guided him, his senses honing in on the perfect moment. The 0-point robot's foot was raised high, ready to crush Ochako beneath its massive foot. Crimson Demon Strike, Izuku shouted, his voice sharp and full of resolve. He swung his sword with all the power he could muster, channeling his armament Haki into the blade. The strike was precise, his sword cutting through the air like lightning. With a resounding crack, Izuku's blade cleaved through the massive foot of the robot. Sparks flew, and the severed arm fell to the ground with a thunderous crash, its mechanical joints grinding to a halt as the 0-point robot began to fall forward as it had been thrown off balance. Izuku barely registered the exhaustion in his limbs as he grabbed Ochako, pulling her from the rubble and yanking her out of harm's way. She gasped for air, looking up at him with wide eyes, clearly shaken by the near-death experience. "Thank you," she whispered, still dazed. Izuku didn't waste a second. He could hear the 0-point robot roaring in anger. Its remaining leg was trying to help him get back up, but there was nothing more he could do. The robot was too large, and he had already done what he could. He quickly dragged Ochako farther from the path of the looming danger. As he reached safety, the booming voice of Present Mike echoed through the city. "All right, that's it. The practical exam has ended. All students are to cease combat and return to the starting area immediately." Izuku's heart was still racing, his body trembling from the strain. His sword, still glowing with the remnants of his armament Haki, hung heavily at his side. He looked around, seeing the other students either retreating or finishing off their last few robots. Some were already celebrating their successes, while others were stunned by the intensity of the test. He breathed a sigh of relief, feeling the adrenaline slowly ebbing away as he realized that the test was finally over. Ochako looked at him, still in awe. You really saved me." Izuku's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, but he smiled at her. "It was nothing. I couldn't just let you get hurt." As the crowd of students began to gather in the center of the city, Present Mick's voice rang out once again. "Great work, everyone. Now, head back to the stadium and get ready for the results. UA will be announcing your scores soon." Izuku glanced back one last time at the 0-point robot, its massive frame now frozen in place. The foot DHE had severed lay in a twisted heap, and the machine was beginning to power down. It was a dangerous beast, but Izuku had managed to stop it long enough to save someone's life. He had passed the test not just by defeating robots, but by showing what it meant to be a hero. He hadn't just relied on his quirk or his swordsmanship, he had acted when it counted, putting himself at risk to protect someone else. As he walked back toward the starting area, he felt something deep inside him shift. This was just the beginning. The entrance exam was over, but his journey was just beginning. Izuku Midoriya sat in his room, his legs crossed on his bed, staring intently at the ceiling. The events of the UA entrance exam replayed in his mind like a film reel. His sword, now resting on its stand against the wall, gleamed faintly in the sunlight streaming through the window. His body still ached slightly from the intensity of the test, but it was a good reminder of his hard work. He had done everything he could during the exam. He had fought robot after robot, used his Haki to its fullest, and saved Ochako from the 0-point robot. But now, the waiting game had begun. Days had passed since the exam, and the uncertainty was eating at him. What if I didn't score enough? Izuku muttered to himself, gripping the bedsheet tightly. What if saving Ochako cost me the points I needed? A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Izuku, there's a letter for you," his mother, Inko Midoriya, called from the hallway. Izuku's heart leaped into his throat. He scrambled off the bed, nearly tripping over himself as he rushed to the door. His mother stood there, holding a large envelope with the UA logo stamped across the front. "It's from UA," she said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. Izuku took the envelope with trembling hands, staring at it as though it might disappear if he blinked. "Thank you, Mom," he stammered, stepping back into his room. Inko gave him a reassuring smile. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of you." Izuku nodded, shutting the door behind him. He sat at his desk, staring at the envelope for a long moment before finally tearing it open. A small disc slipped out, clattering onto the wooden surface. He picked it up and placed it in his computer's projection port. A moment later, the holographic figure of All Might appeared, his larger-than-life grin filling the room. "Congratulations, young Midoriya," All Might's voice boomed, causing Izuku to jump slightly in his chair. "All Might, Izuku gasped, his eyes wide. That's right, I'm here to deliver the good news personally. You passed the UA entrance exam. Izuku's heart felt like it might burst. He clutched his chest, his breath catching in his throat as All Might continued. Now, let's break down your performance, All Might said, gesturing to a chart that appeared beside him. You scored an impressive 57 points in the combat section. That's no small feat, young man, but what really set you apart was your heroic spirit. The chart shifted, showing a replay of Izuku cutting through the 0-point robot's arm to save Ochako. You earned 60 rescue points for your actions during the exam, bringing your total to 117 points, All Might said proudly. Your selflessness and courage exemplify what it means to be a hero. Welcome to UA High School, young Midoriya. The hologram ended, leaving Izuku staring at the now blank screen. He was in. He had made it. A new beginning. The next morning, Izuku stood before the towering gates of UA High School, his acceptance letter safely tucked into his bag. The campus was even more impressive up close, the sheer size and grandeur of the buildings filling him with awe. Wow, he murmured, stepping through the gates. Students bustled around him, all wearing the same expression of excitement and nervousness. He recognized a few faces from the exam, including Ochako, who waved enthusiastically when she spotted him. Midoriya, over here, she called, jogging over to him. Uraraka, Izuku said, smiling shyly. I was hoping I'd see you here, she said cheerfully. Thanks again for saving me during the exam. I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck. I just did what anyone would do. No way, Ochako said firmly. Not everyone would have faced that 0-point robot like you did. That was amazing. Before Izuku could respond, a familiar voice cut through the conversation. You two again? They turned to see Tenya Ida approaching, his stride purposeful and his expression serious. I'm surprised to see you here, Midoriya, Ida said, adjusting his glasses. But I must commend you. Your actions during the exam were truly commendable. Thanks, Ida, Izuku said, taken aback by the unexpected compliment. I misjudged you, Ida admitted. You're clearly someone who acts with purpose and resolve. I look forward to seeing what you can do. Izuku smiled, feeling a bit more confident. Thanks. I'm looking forward to learning with all of you. Near the back of the room sat a tall girl with black hair tied into a high ponytail, her posture regal and confident. She seemed to exude intelligence and poise, flipping through a thick notebook as though reviewing some sort of plan. Izuku hesitated before walking over, his innate curiosity urging him forward. Hi, he said nervously, clutching his bag. Is it okay if I sit here? The girl glanced up, her dark eyes studying him for a moment before she smiled politely. Of course. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu. It's nice to meet you. Izuku Midoriya, he stammered, quickly taking the seat next to her. You're the one who destroyed the 0-point robot during the entrance exam, aren't you? Momo asked, her tone genuinely curious. Why, yeah, Izuku admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. But it wasn't really anything special. I just couldn't let someone get hurt. That kind of thinking is exactly what makes a good hero, Momo said with a small nod. It's clear you have a strong sense of responsibility. Izuku blinked, surprised by the compliment. Thank you, that means a lot coming from someone like you. Someone like me? She asked, raising an eyebrow. You just seem really, smart, he said quickly, his cheeks turning pink. Momo chuckled softly. Thank you. I hope we can work well together this year. As more students filed into the room, Izuku began discreetly surveying his classmates, his notebook already in hand. At one table, a girl with pink skin and yellow eyes was chatting animatedly with a tall boy who had multiple arms. The girl's energy was infectious, and Izuku quickly scribbled down notes. Pink skin, highly energetic. Possible quirk related to mobility or elasticity. Another boy with red spiky hair and sharp teeth stood by the window, laughing with a short boy whose head resembled a literal grape. Red-haired boy, sturdy-looking physique, likely physical strength quirk. Grape-headed boy, quirk likely related to adhesive properties? As Izuku continued jotting notes, his eyes landed on a boy sitting at the back with his feet propped up on the desk. Katsuki Bakugo, get your feet off the desk. The booming voice of Tenya Ida shattered the hum of conversation in the room. He marched over to Bakugo, his expression stern and authoritative. This is a place of learning, Ida said, pointing at Bakugo. You're disrespecting the school and the people who worked hard to get here. Bakugo lazily opened one eye, his lips curling into a smirk. And who made you class president? Huh? Go bother someone else, for eyes. Ida's eyes widened, and he stiffened at the insult. This kind of behavior is unacceptable. You'll regret such an attitude when the teachers see you. Yeah, Bakugo muttered, waving him off. Izuku, still sitting with Momo, winced. He knew this wasn't going to end well. A familiar face. Before Ida could retort, Bakugo's sharp gaze locked onto Izuku. His smirk deepened, turning into something far more menacing. Well, Bakugo drawled, standing up and ignoring Ida completely. If it isn't Deku. Izuku's stomach twisted in knots as Bakugo sauntered over, hands shoved into his pockets. Surprised you made it this far, Bakugo sneered, leaning in close. But don't get comfortable. You're still the same loser I've always known. Izuku swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around his notebook. I'm not the same person anymore, Kakin. Bakugo's eyes narrowed, a dangerous gleam in them. We'll see how long that lasts. Before things could escalate further, Momo stood up, her voice calm but firm. This kind of behavior is unnecessary, she said, her gaze steady as she looked at Bakugo. We're all here to become heroes. You should focus on your own progress instead of trying to intimidate others. Bakugo's smirk faltered slightly, but he quickly covered it with a scoff. Whatever. He turned and stomped back to his seat, leaving Izuku feeling a mix of gratitude and tension. Thank you, Izuku whispered to Momo. She nodded, sitting down again. Don't let people like him distract you. You're here because you earned it. Izuku nodded, her words giving him a small boost of confidence. Suddenly, the door slid open with a loud thud. A strange figure in a yellow sleeping bag slithered into the room and collapsed at the front. Is that our teacher? The pink-skinned girl near the front whispered to the boy with lightning bolt-shaped hair. No way. This has got to be a joke, the spiky-haired boy with a tail muttered. But the figure sat up, unzipping the bag to reveal a scruffy man with tired eyes and unkempt hair. It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down, the man said flatly, his voice as lifeless as his appearance. Pathetic. The room was dead silent. I'm Shoto Aizawa. I'm your homeroom teacher, he continued, standing up and scanning the room lazily. We don't have time for orientation icebreakers. Change into these. He tossed a pile of gym uniforms onto the desk nearest him. Wait, no introductions, or anything? A brown-haired girl near the middle asked, raising her hand hesitantly. Aizawa sighed, rubbing his temples like he was already regretting his decision to teach. Fine. Quick introductions. Name and quirk. Then suit up and meet me on the field. Hi, I'm Mina Ashido, the pink-skinned girl said, standing with a grin. She summoned a bubbly, pink liquid from her hands. My quirk is acid. I can control how strong or gooey it is. I am Tenya Ida, the boy with glasses declared as he stood rigidly, his voice as sharp as his posture. My quirk is engine. I have engines in my legs that let me move at incredible speed. When it was Izuku's turn, he swallowed hard, feeling every pair of eyes on him. He stood up slowly. I'm Izuku Midoriya. My quirk is called Haki. It enhances my senses, strength, and willpower. I can also sense people's movements and strengthen my attacks. There were murmurs of interest, but it was Katsuki Bakugo who scoffed loudest. Uft, sounds complicated. Got anything flashy? Or are you just gonna predict when we yawn, Deku? Izuku blushed, but didn't respond. Katsuki Bakugo, the spiky-haired boy, barked when it was his turn. He stood lazily, his hands shoved in his pockets. I make things blow up. Well, that's direct, someone muttered. The next student stood, his two-toned hair catching everyone's attention. I'm Shoto Todoroki. My quirk is half cold, half hot. I can control fire and ice on either side of my body. Each student's introduction only heightened the tension in the room. It was clear that these weren't ordinary kids, they were future heroes, each with incredible potential. As the students filed out of the classroom to pick up their gym uniforms, Izuku found himself walking next to Momo Yaoyorozu. She carried herself with an air of quiet confidence, but Izuku couldn't help but feel a little intimidated. Momo-san, he started hesitantly, glancing over at her. She turned her head slightly, acknowledging him. Yes? I thought your introduction was really impressive, he said, rubbing the back of his neck nervously. Creation seems like such a versatile quirk. I bet you can do so many amazing things with it. Momo smiled softly. Thank you. It does have its advantages, but it requires a lot of studying. I have to memorize the molecular structure of everything I create. Wow, Izuku said, his eyes widening. That's amazing. You must study a lot, huh? She chuckled lightly. I suppose you could say that. But your quirk, Haki, is fascinating. The ability to sense people's movements and enhance yourself. It sounds like a quirk that requires strong mental discipline. Izuku nodded, a little surprised by her observation. Why, yeah, it does. It's all about focus. If I lose control, it doesn't work as well. Interesting, Momo mused. You seem to have a good understanding of your abilities. Thanks, Izuku said, blushing slightly. He glanced down at the ground as they continued walking. It's nice talking to you, Momo-san. She gave him another small smile. Likewise, Midoriya-san. The boys' locker room. Inside the boys' locker room, the atmosphere was light and full of banter. Katsuki Bakugo had already claimed a corner by himself, shooting dirty looks at anyone who came too close. Denki Kaminari grinned as he tossed his gym uniform onto the bench. Man, did you see that Shoto guy? Fire and ice. That's so unfair. Yeah, but you've got electricity, Ijiro Kirishima pointed out. That's awesome too. I just hope I don't fry my own brain during the test, Kaminari said with a laugh. Izuku was quietly changing, trying not to draw attention to himself, when Ida approached him. Midoriya, correct? Ida asked, adjusting his glasses. Why, yeah? Izuku replied nervously. You mentioned that your quirk enhances your senses. That's remarkable. Do you have any techniques or strategies in mind for today's test? Izuku blinked. Oh, I haven't thought that far ahead yet. I guess I'll just try to do my best. An admirable attitude, Ida declared, nodding approvingly. We should all strive to push our limits today. From his corner, Bakugo snorted. You're all overthinking it. Just crush everything. That's how you win. The boys exchanged glances, but didn't respond. The girls' locker room. Meanwhile, the girls' locker room was buzzing with chatter. Mina Ishido sat on a bench, tying her gym shoes, while Achiko Uraraka leaned against a locker, smiling. Hey, did you see how Midoriya was talking to Momo earlier? Mina said with a mischievous grin. What about it? Achiko asked, tilting her head curiously. I'm just saying, Mina said, smirking. He looked super nervous. You think he's got a crush? Kyokujiro chuckled from her spot near the wall. Or maybe he's just shy. He seems like the type. Momo, who was calmly tying her hair into a ponytail, glanced up. He's just polite. There's nothing more to it. Oh, come on, Momo, Mina teased, leaning closer. Do you like him? You were smiling a lot when you were talking to him. Momo's cheeks turned faintly pink, but she maintained her composure. He's nice and interesting to talk to. But I don't think that's relevant right now. Ah, you're blushing, Mina laughed, earning a quiet giggle from Achiko. Let's focus on the test, shall we? Momo said firmly, standing up and turning to face the group. But the slight flush on her face didn't go unnoticed. The girls exchanged knowing looks, stifling more laughter as they continued getting ready. The class gathered on the school's training field, each student wearing the blue UA gym uniforms with the signature U design. Aizawa stood before them, looking as disinterested as ever. All right, Aizawa began, holding a tablet. You'll be doing a quirk apprehension test. This will help me figure out what you're capable of and where you stand. Wait, what about orientation? Achiko asked, raising her hand. We don't have time for that, Aizawa replied flatly. The pro-hero world doesn't run on a schedule that suits your comfort. If you want to be a hero, you'd better be ready to adapt. The students exchanged uncertain looks as Aizawa smirked slightly. Oh, and one more thing, he said. Whoever comes in last will be expelled. The class gasped in unison. Expelled? Izuku blurted out. Aizawa's eyes narrowed, the hint of a smirk still playing on his lips. Welcome to UA. The tension was palpable as Class 1A stood on the training field. The morning sun beat down relentlessly, casting long shadows over the blue UA gym uniforms they all wore. Izuku's heart thumped loudly in his chest, his fingers nervously clenching the hem of his shirt. He could feel the pressure in the air, an invisible weight that made it harder to breathe. Aizawa's announcement about the potential expulsion had cast a dark cloud over them, one that seemed to follow each student as they stood in anxious silence. Whoever comes in last is expelled. The words hung in the air, suffocating, as if the very air around them had thickened. Every student's gaze shifted nervously between each other, and the stakes of the day became incredibly clear. Izuku glanced around, trying to gauge the reactions of his classmates. Some, like Bakugo, seemed unaffected by the threat of failure, exuding an air of disinterest, while others, like Ochako, looked genuinely worried. Is he serious? Ochako whispered to Izuku, her voice trembling with the same anxiety Izuku could feel in his own chest. Yeah, but we don't have a choice, Izuku muttered back, trying to steady his breathing, his hands twitching with nerves. He couldn't afford to get distracted. There was no room for error today. The pressure was suffocating, and Izuku could feel it creeping into his bones. I can't fail here. Not after all this, he thought, his pulse racing. Aizawa, as cold and detached as always, held up a small device, his eyes scanning the group with indifference. Let's see what you've got. First up, the 50-meter dash. His voice was flat, but there was an underlying sharpness to it that made Izuku's heart beat even faster. He pointed to the marked track nearby, where the white lines seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Midoriya, Aizawa called, his gaze locking onto Izuku with the usual unblinking intensity. Let's see how fast you are. Izuku's stomach flipped. He swallowed hard, his mouth suddenly dry, his heart thudding against his ribcage like a drumbeat. His legs felt heavy weight, down by the anxiety creeping up his spine. This is it. I have to prove myself, he told himself. He had no idea how he was supposed to keep up with Ida or Bakugo, two of the fastest in the class, but he had no choice but to give it everything he had. With a final deep breath, Izuku forced himself forward to the starting line. Beside him, Tenya Ida stood tall, his engines already starting to hum with energy, ready to propel him forward. He gave Izuku an encouraging smile, his earnestness as unwavering as ever. This will be a good test, Ida said confidently, his voice always full of that quiet determination. Let's see your speed, Midoriya. Izuku nodded, though his insides were a tangled mess of nerves. He bent his knees, and as his body began to settle into position, he activated his observation Haki. Instantly, the world around him seemed to sharpen. Every minute detail, from the sway of Ida's hair to the tiny shifting of his muscles, was crystal clear to Izuku's heightened senses. Time itself felt like it slowed down, and for a moment, he was able to push his anxiety aside. On your marks, Aizawa's voice was almost inaudible now, like it came from far away. Get set. Go. And then, like a shot from a cannon, Ida was off. His engines roared to life, and within the blink of an eye, he was a blur of motion, tearing down the track at an unbelievable speed. Izuku surged forward, his legs pumping as he channeled his armament Haki into them, using it to propel himself faster than he thought possible. The world blurred around him as he focused entirely on his form, on pushing through the fatigue that was already setting in. I can't keep up with him, Izuku realized as Ida's figure pulled farther ahead, but a determination rose in him, and he pushed himself harder. I just need to give it everything I've got. His legs burned with every step, but he was determined. The finish line seemed to stretch out ahead of him like an endless horizon. With every step, his muscles screamed for relief, but he ignored them, focusing only on reaching that line. He could feel the weight of his classmates' gazes, Bakugo's disdainful glare, Todoroki's quiet scrutiny, Momo's supportive gaze. Their eyes were on him, and he refused to let them down. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Izuku crossed the finish line, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His chest heaved, and for a moment, he felt like collapsing. But then, Aizawa's voice cut through the haze of exhaustion. 6.9 seconds. Izuku blinked, his mind struggling to process the result. It wasn't Ida's impressive 3.04 seconds, but it was better than he had expected. Much better. He stumbled back to the sidelines, trying to steady his breathing. Not bad for someone without a speed-oriented quirk, Momo said, her voice warm and encouraging. She jotted something down in her notebook, her calm demeanor unchanged by the test. She always seemed so composed, but her words brought Izuku a measure of comfort. Ida approached, offering a smile. Good work, Midoriya, you've clearly been training. Thanks, Izuku stammered, still trying to catch his breath. The rest of the class took their turns, and Izuku observed them carefully, studying their different approaches. Denki Kaminari's run was solid, though his speed was slightly hampered by his usual lack of focus, as he nearly tripped over his own feet. Mina Ishido, on the other hand, used her acid quirk in an impressive display, sliding effortlessly along the track, her agility drawing surprised murmurs from the others. Izuku couldn't help but admire Mina's ingenuity. She used her quirk creatively to compensate for her lack of speed. I should take notes for later. Todoroki, of course, stole the show. A burst of ice shot from his feet, propelling him forward in a flurry of snow and ice. The result was nothing short of spectacular. He completed the dash in a staggering 3.2 seconds, his control over his power flawless. Bakugo, as always, was not far behind. With his usual scornful smirk, he launched himself forward, explosions firing from his palms as he tore through the air. He finished in 4.1 seconds, his usual arrogance not dimmed in the slightest. Too easy, he sneered, glaring at the rest of the class as if daring them to try and surpass him. Izuku clenched his fists but remained silent, determined not to rise to Bakugo's provocations. He had to keep his focus on himself. Bakugo's taunts would only throw him off. The next challenge was a grip strength test, one that had Izuku feeling even more anxious. Shoji Mizo went first, his multiple arms flexing as he gripped the device. The result? A jaw-dropping 540 kilograms. The entire class stared in awe, impressed by his raw strength. Bakugo went next, his hand crackling with sparks as he gripped the device. 87 kilograms, Aizawa announced, his tone flat and uninterested. That's it. Kaminari teased, unable to help himself, but he was met with a sharp, fiery glare from Bakugo. How about I show you what these hands can really do? Bakugo growled, his temper flaring as sparks flew from his palms. Kaminari quickly backed off, chuckling nervously as the tension in the air increased. Izuku's turn came up, and he hesitated for a moment, his palms damp with sweat. Focus. Use your Haki, he reminded himself. Channeling his armament Haki into his hand, he gripped the device with all the force he could muster. The machine beeped rapidly as it measured his strength, and the result appeared, 65 kilograms. Izuku exhaled in relief. It wasn't an exceptional result, but it wasn't bad either. Not bad, Midoriya, Aizawa commented, his voice neutral but not dismissive. 65? That's amazing. Ochako cheered from the sidelines, her face lighting up with excitement. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Izuku couldn't help but smile despite himself. He glanced at Momo, who gave him a small, approving nod, and that made him feel even better. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm improving, Izuku thought. The next event was the long-distance softball throw. Aizawa handed each student a ball, instructing them to use their quirks to achieve the maximum distance. Uraraka, you're up, Aizawa called. Ochiko's smile was wide and full of energy as she stepped forward, holding the ball in both hands. She activated her zero-gravity quirk, causing the ball to float effortlessly in the air. With a flick of her wrist, she sent it soaring. Infinity, Aizawa said, holding up his tablet, his tone not at all surprised. The class erupted into laughter and applause at Ochiko's astounding performance. Midoriya, you're next, Aizawa called. Izuku took a deep breath and approached the line, gripping the softball with trembling hands. His nerves were still high, but he pushed them aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. He activated both observation and armament Haki, pushing his focus to the absolute limit. His eyes zeroed in on the target, and he poured everything he had into the throw. The ball soared through the air, cutting through the wind like a missile, its trajectory flawless. The class watched in silence, their eyes following the flight path. 247 meters, Aizawa announced, nodding slightly in approval. Izuku blinked in disbelief. I did it. I actually improved. He had surpassed his previous attempts by a wide margin. Not bad, Deku, Bakugo muttered grudgingly, though his usual scorn was nowhere to be found. His expression was more neutral now, perhaps even slightly impressed. You're improving, Todoroki added, his voice calm but not unkind. Izuku nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. His chest swelled with pride. Despite the overwhelming tension of the day, he was doing better than he had dared hope. The final test was an endurance run. By now, most of the class was visibly fatigued. Their earlier enthusiasm had been dampened by exhaustion. Everyone had given it their all, and now their bodies were screaming for rest. Izuku's legs burned with every step, but he refused to stop. Beside him, Ida maintained his steady pace, his engines humming softly, his breath steady despite the relentless pace. Behind them, Bakugo and Todoroki were locked in a fierce rivalry, each determined to outrun the other. The air around them crackled with competitive energy as sparks and frost trailed behind them like a visual representation of their rivalry. Izuku gritted his teeth, muttering to himself as he pushed through the pain. Come on, legs keep moving. His breath came in ragged gasps, but he refused to slow down. He thought of his mom, of All Might's faith in him, of everything he had worked for. I can't give up. Not here. Each lap felt like an eternity. His vision blurred with fatigue, but Izuku forced himself to focus on his breathing, pushing through the pain and exhaustion. Finally, the whistle blew, signaling the end. Izuku collapsed onto the grass, his body screaming in protest as he gasped for air. But amidst the pain, he felt a sense of accomplishment, something deeper than just physical exhaustion. The results were announced quickly. Aizawa stood before them, his expression unreadable, holding up his tablet. The results are in, he said. His voice was calm, as though nothing unusual had happened. The one in last place is. The class waited in tense silence. The air was thick with anticipation. Minoru Mineta. Mineta let out a wail, dropping to his knees dramatically. No, I can't be expelled, please, Mr. Aizawa. Give me another chance. Aizawa sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. Relax. I wasn't serious about the expulsion. The class collectively gasped. You lied to us. Kaminari exclaimed, his voice full of disbelief. It was a logical ruse, Aizawa said with a shrug, his tone as indifferent as always. Heroes need to perform under pressure. If you can't handle the stress of a test, how will you handle real danger? Izuku felt an overwhelming sense of relief, as though a massive weight had been lifted from his shoulders. As the class began to disperse, Izuku noticed Momo approaching him, her expression thoughtful as always, composed and serene. Midoriya, she said, her voice soft but firm. You performed well today. Your efforts are paying off. Thanks, Izuku stammered, scratching the back of his head. You too. You were amazing. Momo smiled faintly. Hard work is key. It's clear you've been pushing your limits. Before she could leave, Izuku blurted, Can I get your number? For, training tips and strategy stuff. Momo looked surprised, but then smiled kindly. Of course. As they exchanged numbers, Izuku's heart raced with a mixture of pride and nervous excitement. It was a small step, but to him, it meant everything. Just then, Bakugo's voice broke through the moment. Look at you, nerd, he called, a smirk on his face. Didn't think you had the guts. Shut up, Kakin. Izuku stammered, his face heating up as he shoved his phone into his pocket. Bakugo smirked, but didn't press further. As Izuku turned toward the dorms, he felt a renewed sense of determination. Today had tested him, but he had risen to the challenge. Tomorrow, he promised himself, he'd do even better. The hum of conversation filled the air as Class 1A settled into their seats. The tension from the quirk assessment test the day before had mostly faded, replaced by a sense of relief and cautious optimism. No one had been expelled despite Aizawa's harsh words, and that alone had been enough to boost everyone's spirits. Izuku sat at his desk, furiously scribbling notes in his ever-present hero notebook. He replayed the events of the test in his mind, analyzing every movement and decision he and his classmates had made. Beside him, Ida adjusted his glasses with his usual meticulousness, while Achiko leaned over, peeking at Izuku's notes. Midoriya, you're always so detailed with these, Achiko said with a laugh, her voice light and cheerful. How do you even remember all that? Izuku scratched the back of his head, chuckling nervously. It's just a habit. I want to make sure I can learn from everything, you know? Deku's just a nerd, Bakugo muttered from across the room, his arms crossed as he slouched in his seat. Though his words were harsh, his tone lacked the usual venom, almost as if he'd grudgingly accepted Izuku's growth. Before anyone could respond, the door slid open with a loud thud, and Aizawa entered, his sleeping bag slung over one shoulder. His disheveled hair and perpetually tired expression were as intimidating as ever, and the class quickly fell silent. Good. You're learning to shut up when I walk in, Aizawa muttered, dropping the sleeping bag on the floor. He scanned the room with his sharp, tired gaze. You survived yesterday's test. That's a start. But don't let it go to your heads. You're still far from being heroes. The class exchanged nervous glances, but no one dared to speak. Aizawa continued, pulling out a tablet and tapping on it. Today, we'll be shifting focus. You've had your physical capabilities tested. Now it's time to start applying your quirks in realistic scenarios. The room buzzed with quiet excitement. Izuku straightened in his seat, his heart pounding with anticipation. Aizawa's gaze sharpened. For that, you'll need guidance. Which is why the door burst open, and a familiar booming voice filled the room. I am here. All Might strode in, his cape billowing dramatically behind him, his ever-present smile radiating confidence. The room erupted into cheers and gasps of excitement. All Might, Izuku exclaimed, his eyes lighting up. Even after seeing him so many times, the sight of his idol never failed to inspire awe. All Might struck a pose at the front of the classroom, his presence filling the space. Today, we'll be conducting a battle training exercise. Real combat situations are where heroes truly shine, and it's time for you all to experience what it's like to face villains head-on. Aizawa sighed, muttering under his breath about All Might's theatrics, but he didn't interrupt. All Might gestured dramatically to a monitor that flickered to life behind him. You'll also be receiving your hero costumes. Your designs were based on the requests you submitted before enrollment, so they should suit your fighting styles. The class erupted in excitement. The reveal, Izuku's hero suit. In the locker room, Izuku opened the case containing his hero suit. He hesitated, his heart racing as he recalled the inspiration for the design, a symbol of freedom and strength. When he stepped out onto the training field, his classmates turned to look, many of them visibly impressed. Izuku's suit mirrored Shanks' attire from One Piece. A flowing black cape draped over one shoulder, a loose white shirt tucked into dark pants, and sturdy brown boots. A red sash tied around his waist completed the look, giving him a roguish, confident air. Wow, Midoriya Achiko exclaimed, her eyes wide. That's so cool. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, his face flushed. I thought it'd be a good fit for me. Something simple, but meaningful. It suits you, Momo added, her tone thoughtful. Her own hero suit, a sleek red leotard with gold accents, was both elegant and practical, designed to maximize her quirk's efficiency. What kind of hero wears a pirate costume? Bakugo sneered, though his usual fire wasn't behind the comment. Izuku stood a little straighter, his grip on the hilt of the sword at his side tightening. It's not just a costume. It's a reminder to protect the people I care about. The class buzzed with anticipation as All Might gestured to a small box sitting on a table near him. The students stood in a semicircle, their new hero costumes gleaming in the sunlight. This box, All Might began, his voice booming, contains numbered cards to determine your teams. Team A will be the heroes, and Team B will play the villains for the first match. Remember, this is about strategy and teamwork. Izuku adjusted the hilt of the wooden sword at his side. It felt strange but oddly comforting, hanging from the sash of his Shanks-inspired hero outfit. He glanced at Momo, standing nearby, her red and gold outfit as elegant as ever. She caught his eye and offered him a calm nod, which helped settle his nerves. Now, draw your lots, All Might instructed, waving a hand toward the box. Each student approached in turn, drawing a card from the box. Izuku stared at his with wide eyes. Momo walked up next and returned with her card. Looks like we're on the same team, she said, her voice steady. This should be interesting. Izuku smiled nervously. Why yeah, let's give it our best. On the other side, Bakugo and Ito were designated Team B. Bakugo grinned wickedly, his hands already crackling with tiny explosions. The teams were led to opposite sides of Training Ground Beta. Team A's mission was simple. Infiltrate the building where the bomb was located and secure it. Team B's job was to guard the bomb and stop the heroes at all costs. Momo and Izuku stood outside the mock building, strategizing. Bakugo will rush us, Momo said, frowning slightly. He's aggressive and impulsive, but Ito will balance that out with his strategic mind. We'll need to stay flexible. Izuku nodded, gripping the hilt of his sword. I'll try to handle Kaken. You focus on finding the bomb. I'll back you up as soon as I can. Momo hesitated, then gave him a small smile. Be careful, Midoriya. Let's trust each other to do our parts. All Might's voice boomed across the training ground. Begin. Izuku and Momo entered the building cautiously. The air inside was tense and dimly lit, the flickering lights adding an eerie atmosphere. They crept through the first floor, sticking close to the walls. Without warning, a deafening boom echoed through the corridor ahead. The narrow hallway trembled with the force of Bakugo's opening explosion, debris scattering like shrapnel as the walls bore scorch marks from his fiery assault. Izuku stood firm, his sword drawn, the faint gleam of armament Haki coating the blade's edge. You've been hiding a lot, haven't you, Deku? Bakugo sneered, his crimson eyes gleaming with fiery intensity. But it doesn't matter how strong you've gotten. I'm still gonna crush you. Izuku's grip on his sword tightened. I'm not hiding anymore, Kakin, and I won't back down. The tension snapped as Bakugo lunged forward, palm glowing with explosive energy. Die? Izuku moved instinctively, observation Haki guiding his body. His blade sliced through the air, intercepting Bakugo's blast in a fiery clash. Sparks and smoke erupted around them as the shockwave rattled the hallway. Bakugo skidded back, his grin widening. You think swinging a sword around makes you a match for me? Izuku didn't respond, his breathing steady as he shifted into a defensive stance. His eyes focused solely on Bakugo's movements. Every muscle in his body coiled like a spring. Bakugo charged again, this time feinting left before spinning midair, unleashing a cluster of small explosions in rapid succession. The hallway was a blur of heat and light as the blasts tore through the air. Izuku darted to the side, his sword moving like a shield, deflecting the explosions with precise, calculated slashes. Each swing left trails of faint energy, the armament Haki reinforcing the blade's strength. I'm not just swinging, Izuku countered, closing the distance between them in a single, fluid motion. His sword arced downward in a diagonal slash, forcing Bakugo to leap back. The blade sliced through the ground, leaving a deep, clean gouge in the floor. Bakugo's eyes narrowed. TCH, so you've learned a few tricks. He thrust his hands forward, palms wide. But let's see how long you can keep up. Bakugo's barrage. The air around them ignited as Bakugo unleashed a relentless barrage of explosions. The force of the blast created a storm of fire and smoke, obscuring the hallway and forcing Izuku to retreat. Running already? Bakugo taunted, his voice cutting through the roar of explosions. Izuku planted his feet, using his sword to deflect an incoming blast. The heat scorched his sleeve, but he held his ground. I'm not running, he shouted, dashing forward through the smoke. The two clashed in a flurry of motion, Bakugo's fists sparking with explosive power, Izuku's blade moving like a living extension of himself. Bakugo swung wildly, aiming for Izuku's torso, but Izuku parried the attack, twisting his body to avoid the follow-up blast. The hallway was a battlefield of fire and steel, each strike sending shockwaves through the air. Bakugo's explosions lit up the dim corridor, their heat searing the walls, while Izuku's sword strikes carved through the chaos with precision. Strategy in motion. Izuku could feel the strain in his arms as he deflected another explosive punch. Bakugo wasn't just powerful, he was relentless, pressing every advantage with feral intensity. But Izuku wasn't fighting blindly. His observation Haki gave him a fraction of a second to read Bakugo's movements, and he used that time to adapt. Bakugo lunged again, aiming a blast at Izuku's face. Izuku sidestepped, using the flat of his blade to redirect the explosion downward. The blast cratered the floor, and Izuku took the opening to counterattack. Now, he slashed upward, forcing Bakugo to block with his gauntlet. The impact sent Bakugo sliding back, his feet scraping against the floor. You're getting cocky, Bakugo snarled, launching himself forward with an explosion. Izuku ducked under the attack, pivoting behind Bakugo. Before Bakugo could react, Izuku swung his sword in a wide arc, the blade's edge glinting with energy. Bakugo twisted mid-air, using an explosion to propel himself out of range. He landed on the ground, panting slightly. You're starting to make me furious, Deku. Izuku stood his ground, the tip of his sword pointed at Bakugo. That's because I'm not the same as before. I'm done being afraid of you. The clash intensifies. Bakugo's expression darkened. He spread his arms wide, the grenade-like gauntlets on his wrists glowing ominously. Fine, then let's end this. The gauntlets discharged a massive explosion, the force so intense it shook the entire building. The wave of fire and debris surged toward Izuku like a tidal wave. Izuku didn't flinch. He planted his feet and raised his sword, channeling all his focus into armament Haki. The blade shimmered with dark energy as he swung with all his might. The clash was cataclysmic. The explosion met Izuku's sword head-on, splitting around him like water against a rock. The hallway was engulfed in smoke and ash, the air thick with the acrid smell of burnt metal. When the dust cleared, Izuku stood in the center of the destruction, his sword glowing faintly. He was battered, his coat torn and his breathing heavy, but his resolve was unshaken. Bakugo staggered, his gauntlets cracked from the force of his own attack. His eyes burned with frustration, but there was also a flicker of grudging respect. "You're still standing," he muttered. Izuku straightened, pointing his sword at Bakugo. "Because I won't give up." Kirishima slammed his hands on the desk, leaning forward. "Whoa, look at those explosions. Bakugo's going all out." "That's nothing new," Kaminari added, wincing as the screen lit up with another fiery blast. "But seriously, when did Midoriya get a sword?" Todoroki's gaze was calm, but there was a flicker of curiosity in his mismatched eyes. "It's not just the sword. He's using some kind of technique to deflect Bakugo's attacks. His footwork is incredible," Siyu observed, her finger tapping her chin. "He's not just dodging, he's predicting Bakugo's moves." Meanwhile, Mineta clutched his head. "Are they trying to destroy the whole building?" Focus Aizawa's sharp voice silenced the room. His eyes narrowed at the screen. "Watch closely. Both of them are pushing their limits." Back in the main hallway, the fight reached its climax. Both Izuku and Bakugo were battered and bruised, their energy reserves nearly depleted. Bakugo growled, his palms sparking faintly. "This ends now." Izuku's sword trembled in his hands, but he steadied his grip. "You're right. Let's finish this." They charged at each other, the hallway shaking with the force of their final attacks. Bakugo's explosion was larger than ever, a roaring inferno that consumed everything in its path. Izuku met it head-on, swinging his sword with all the armament Haki he could muster. The collision was cataclysmic. The explosion and sword strike collided, creating a massive shockwave that blew out windows and sent debris flying. When the smoke cleared, both Izuku and Bakugo were lying on the floor, unable to move. A draw is declared. In the observation room, silence reigned for a moment. Then, Kirishima broke the tension. "They're both down?" That was insane. Midoriya managed to keep up with Bakugo, Todoroki noted, a hint of surprise in his voice. "That's impressive." "They're equals now," Uraraka said softly, her eyes wide. Aizawa leaned back, his expression unreadable. "Looks like this one's a draw." Both of them gave it everything they had. Elsewhere in the building, Momo was locked in a strategic duel with Ida. "I won't let you pass," Yaoyorozu Ida declared, his engines roaring as he dashed forward with blinding speed. Momo calmly reached into her utility belt, which was brimming with creations she had prepared in advance. As Ida charged, she threw a smoke bomb to the ground, filling the hallway with thick, choking clouds. Ida skidded to a stop, coughing. "Tactical retreat? That won't save you." From the smoke, a pair of caltrops scattered across the floor. Ida narrowly avoided stepping on them, his enhanced reflexes kicking in. Momo's voice echoed from the cloud. "Ida, you rely too much on linear speed. But what happens if I take away your ability to move freely?" The smoke cleared just in time to reveal Momo holding a shield and a polearm. She had also placed several sticky traps on the floor. "Predictable," Ida shouted, leaping over the traps. Momo anticipated this. Using her polearm, she vaulted over Ida, spinning midair to block his retaliatory kick with her shield. They landed in a stalemate, both breathing heavily. "I expected no less from you," Yaoyorozu, Ida admitted. "And I from you," she replied, smiling faintly. The battle between Momo and Ida continued, their movements calculated and precise. Ida's speed was impressive, but Momo's quick thinking and resourcefulness were turning the tide. "You're cornered now," Yaoyorozu Ida declared as he dashed forward, his engines roaring louder than ever. But Momo had been planning for this. As Ida closed the gap, she activated a device she had been assembling behind her back, a small, portable EMP generator. The device emitted a burst of energy, and Ida's engines sputtered and died mid-charge. "What?" Ida exclaimed, his momentum faltering as he stumbled to a stop. Momo seized the opportunity. Using her polearm, she swept Ida's legs out from under him, sending him sprawling to the ground. Before he could recover, she pointed the sharp end of the polearm at his chest. "It's over, Ida," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You're immobilized." Ida's voice rang out behind her. "You've bested me. Yaoyorozu, go claim your victory." Reaching the bomb, Momo stretched out her hand, her fingertips brushing its surface. A siren blared throughout the training arena. "Hey!" Victory declared. All Might's voice boomed over the intercom. "The training exercise is over, the hero team wins." The observation room erupted in cheers and applause. Kirishima pumped his fist into the air. "Yes, way to go, Yaoyorozu, and Midoriya. That was incredible, Uraraka added, practically bouncing in place. Momo's strategy was perfect. Todoroki nodded. Her ability to plan ahead gave her the edge. And Midoriya holding off Bakugo. Impressive teamwork. Bakugo, still sitting against the wall and catching his breath, scowled. You nerds. I should have won. After the exercise, as the students regrouped in the observation room, Izuku and Momo were the center of attention. Kaminari clapped Izuku on the back, grinning. Dude, when did you become a sword fighter? That was awesome. And Momo, that EMP was genius, Jiru added, giving her a thumbs up. Momo thanked them politely, but her eyes kept drifting to Izuku, who was still leaning against the wall, exhausted but smiling faintly. She approached him as the rest of the class dispersed. You did well out there, Midoriya, she said softly, her tone warm. Izuku straightened up, blushing slightly. Thanks, Yaoyorozu. You were amazing. That EMP? I didn't even know you could make something like that so quickly. Momo tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her cheeks tinged with a faint blush. It's all about preparation. But honestly, I think you were the star of the show. Facing Bakugo like that. It was incredible. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, laughing nervously. I don't know about that. You're the one who secured the win for us. There was a brief pause as they both smiled at each other, the atmosphere between them light and comfortable. I was thinking, Momo began, if you're open to it. Maybe we could train together sometime? You've been improving so much, and I think we could learn a lot from each other. Izuku's eyes widened, and he nodded quickly. Why, yeah, I'd love that you're one of the smartest people in our class, so I'd be honored. Momo smiled, her confidence shining through. Then it settled. Let's make each other even better. As she walked away to join the others, Izuku watched her go, a small, determined smile forming on his face. He was exhausted, but he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Today wasn't just a victory, it was a step forward. The atmosphere in Class 1A was still buzzing after the class rep election. Izuku sat at his desk, staring at the paper tally in disbelief. He had never expected to be chosen as the leader of their class, yet here he was, Midoriya Izuku, Class 1A's representative. He exhaled deeply. I have to do my best. Everyone's counting on me. Aizawa stirred from his sleeping bag, rubbing his eyes as he spoke. All right, since you've got your rep and vice rep sorted out, let's move on. He stretched and pulled out his phone, scrolling through what looked like an itinerary. Tomorrow, we're heading to an external training facility. It's called the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ, he announced. You'll be practicing rescue operations in different simulated disaster zones. Pro Hero 13 will be leading the lesson, and I expect you all to listen and learn. A wave of excitement spread through the class. Whoa, that sounds cool, Kirishima said, punching his palm. Rescue training, huh? Siro added. It'll be nice to do something other than combat practice. Rescue operations are just as important as combat, Ida declared. A true hero must be able to save lives efficiently. Aizawa ignored the chatter and continued, be here on time tomorrow. We leave first thing in the morning. Dismissed. As students packed up to leave, Momo approached Izuku. Midoriya, don't forget about our training session later, she reminded him. Right, I'll meet you at the training hall after school, he confirmed. Training with Momo. Later that evening, Izuku and Momo met in one of UA's private training rooms. The space was quiet except for the faint hum of the air system. Momo had prepared a set of wooden swords, placing them neatly on a rack. Let's start with some footwork drills, she said. You have good instincts, but you hesitate in the middle of a fight. That can be dangerous against unpredictable opponents. Izuku nodded and gripped the wooden sword. Momo took her stance, fluid and composed, before launching into a series of precise strikes. Izuku blocked as best he could, but Momo's technique was nearly flawless. You're reading my movements well, but your counters are slow, Momo pointed out. React faster. Izuku adjusted his grip and tried again. With each round, he improved little by little. Momo was patient yet relentless, forcing him to keep up. After an hour, they took a break. Both were breathing heavily but satisfied with their progress. You're improving quickly, Momo said with a small smile. Izuku wiped sweat from his forehead. Thanks, Yaoyorozu. This was really helpful. She nodded. We'll continue this training when we have time. A hero must always strive to be better. Izuku grinned. Right. The USJ excursion begins. The next morning, Class 1A gathered outside, waiting for the school bus. The excitement among the students was palpable. Rescue training, huh? This is gonna be awesome, Kirishima said, grinning. I wonder what kind of disasters they'll simulate, Uraraka mused. The USJ is supposed to be one of the most advanced training facilities at UA, Momo added. It's divided into different zones, each replicating real-world rescue scenarios. As the bus arrived, the students boarded, taking their seats like a normal bus, in rows rather than the circular layout they initially expected. The bus rumbled steadily down the long highway, its interior bathed in the soft glow of the early morning sun streaming through the windows. Unlike the chaotic circular seating arrangement of their previous trip, today's bus was arranged in neat rows, each student occupying a standard seat. The usual buzz of chatter filled the compartment as classmates exchanged excited remarks about the upcoming rescue training at USJ. Yet amid the laughter and chatter, a quieter conversation was about to unfold. Izuku sat near the middle of the bus, his eyes fixed on the view outside as his thoughts drifted between the events of the past day and the uncertain challenges ahead. He absent-mindedly thumbed through the pages of his hero notebook, which was filled with detailed notes and sketches from previous training sessions. Every so often, he caught himself smiling at a memory of a breakthrough in technique or a hard-won lesson from a sparring match. But today, his mind kept returning to his promise with Momo, the promise of training together and growing stronger as heroes. Just then, a soft knock on the seat beside him signaled the arrival of Momo Yaoyorozu. She slid gracefully into the seat next to his, her posture poised and confident. For a moment, the ambient noise of the bus seemed to fade away, replaced by the quiet warmth of her presence. "Do you mind if I sit here?" Momo asked softly, her dark eyes meeting his. There was a gentle kindness in her voice that immediately put Izuku at ease. "Of course not," he replied, his voice a bit breathless. "I'm glad you're here." For a few moments, they sat in comfortable silence as the bus sped along the highway. Outside, the scenery blurred into a collage of golden fields and distant cityscapes, while inside, the conversation began to flow as naturally as if it had always been meant to be. Momo leaned slightly toward Izuku, her tone quiet and thoughtful. "I was thinking about our training session yesterday," she said, glancing down at his open notebook. "You've been working so hard on your footwork and reactions. I can see the improvement already, and I believe that with a little more focus, you can really excel." Izuku's cheeks flushed at her praise, and he fiddled with the strap of his bag. Thank you, Yaoyorozu. Sometimes I worry I'm not progressing fast enough, that I'm still too clumsy when it counts." Her gaze softened, and she offered him a reassuring smile. "Everyone has their own pace, Midoriya. What matters is that you never stop trying. I see the determination in you every time you fight. It's inspiring." Izuku's heart beat a little faster at her words. There was something reassuring and undeniably sincere in the way she looked at him, a mixture of respect and gentle encouragement that made him feel both understood and capable. I really appreciate that," he said, his voice quieter now, almost intimate amidst the hum of the bus engine. For a while, they talked about their aspirations, their struggles, and the challenges of being heroes. Momo shared some of her own experiences, explaining how years of study and rigorous training had shaped her approach to using her quirk. Izuku listened intently, his eyes never leaving hers, as if trying to memorize every detail of her wisdom. "I sometimes feel overwhelmed by everything I have to learn," Izuku admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's so much to master: my haki, my sword techniques, and even just controlling my emotions in battle." Momo reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "I understand, Midoriya. But remember, the path to becoming a hero isn't just about power or technique, it's also about heart. You have a kind heart and a strong will, and that will carry you far." Her touch was light, almost fleeting, yet it sent a warm current through him, dispelling some of his doubts. The conversation deepened as the bus continued on its journey. They discussed strategies for improving in both combat and rescue scenarios, brainstorming ideas on how to combine their strengths in training. Momo's logical perspective balanced perfectly with Izuku's earnest determination. At one point, she even mentioned a few theoretical tactics she had read about, suggesting ways to optimize the use of his observation haki in high-pressure situations. Outside, the landscape shifted, and as the bus neared the USJ, a sense of anticipation settled over them both. The world beyond the windows grew grander, with sprawling fields giving way to a massive, domed structure that gleamed with futuristic metal. The USJ was finally in sight, a symbol of both promise and challenge. Izuku's pulse quickened as he watched the facility approach. "I'm a bit nervous," he confessed softly, his voice laced with vulnerability. "This place, it feels so real. What if I can't handle what we're about to face?" Momo's eyes met his, steady and kind. "You will, Midoriya. I believe in you. We all believe in you." She smiled, and for a moment, the noise of the bus and the world outside fell away, leaving just the two of them in a quiet moment of understanding. As the bus pulled up at the USJ, the students gathered their things and prepared to disembark. Momo squeezed his hand gently before they rose from their seats, a small gesture that conveyed volumes. Izuku felt a warmth spread through him as he looked at her, his determination renewed not just by the prospect of the training ahead, but by the genuine connection they had forged in those few precious moments on the bus. With the USJ looming in the distance and the promise of a new challenge ahead, Izuku took one last deep breath and stepped off the bus, ready to face whatever trials awaited him, knowing that, at least for now, he wasn't alone. The facility was massive, a giant domed structure with sleek metal walls. As they entered, they were greeted by Pro Hero 13, whose space-themed suit gleamed under the lights. "Welcome," Class 1A13 said enthusiastically. "Today, we'll be covering rescue operations. As heroes, saving people is just as important, if not more important, on fighting villains." Aizawa stepped forward, arms crossed. "The USJ is divided into various disaster zones: landslides, floods, fires, collapsed buildings. Your job is to practice rescuing civilians under these conditions." The class looked around in awe as they stepped further inside. They could see artificial rivers, rocky terrain, and even a simulated ruined city in the distance. "This place is amazing," Kaminari said, eyes wide. "It's incredibly detailed," Todoroki noted, scanning the different zones. 13 continued, "Remember, your quirks are powerful, but in rescue situations, they can also be dangerous. Control and precision are key." Before they could start, something strange happened. A low, eerie sound filled the air. The lights flickered, and then, a dark, swirling mist formed in the center of the facility. A group of shadowy figures emerged. Aizawa's eyes immediately sharpened. He pushed his goggles up and stepped in front of the students. "Stay back," he ordered. A deep voice chuckled from within the mist. "You think you can stop us, Eraserhead?" A villain stepped forward, clad in darkness. "We're here for All Might. But if he's not around..." The villain's grin widened. "We'll just have to finish you instead." A shiver ran through the students as the realization hit them: this wasn't part of the training. This was real. The villains spread out, surrounding the class. Aizawa wasted no time, leaping forward and engaging the closest enemies. 13, "Get the students out of here." Before they could retreat, the swirling mist villain, Hirojiri, expanded his quirk. Dark portals opened beneath the students, swallowing them up and scattering them across different zones of the USJ. Izuku barely had time to react before he felt the pull of the portal. His surroundings twisted, and he landed hard in a water terrain. Looking up, he found himself in the water zone alone. Or so he thought. A group of villains stalked toward him, grinning maliciously. Izuku clenched his fists. "I have to fight. I have to survive." So, this was the end of part 1 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.